spending time with her husband, friends, family, including her 12 grandchildren. In her spare time, she connects and celebrates with the women involved in motorsports, taking you behind the wall about their journey of life, racing, and how they juggle everything to make it all work. Welcome to Racing Girls Rock Podcast. Strap in, window nets up, the pedals are down, and when the green flag drops, we go.
Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with the International Women's Motorsports Association, and this is Racing Girls Rock Podcast. We are sponsored by a whole host of wonderful people, including Racing Junk. So if you're quarantined this week like we are, Heather and I, then get on Racing Junk and check out what they've got going on, and also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Lots of social media things going on right now to keep us all connected. So today my guest is Heather Hadley. Heather is a resident of California, and so she's on quarantine, and in Michigan they call it stay home, stay safe. Makes it sound a little better than quarantine. So Heather and I are just going to have a little conversation today about her and her racing. So welcome to the podcast, Heather.
Hi, Melinda. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Heather, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, your family, what's your daily life? Do you go to school? Do you work? That kind of thing. And we'll get started so that we can get to know you a little better.
All right. So I just turned 18 in December. I graduated actually in December also because I wanted to graduate early. So that I could pursue my passion a little bit more. But the virus kind of screwed things up for me in that area. But I've been racing for almost 10 years now. And that's pretty much it. I'm an only child, and I have 2 dogs and 2 cats. And yeah.
Okay, and you live in California. You told me that. So what kind of racing, we're 10 years ago, you were 8 years old. So why don't you tell us the path that you've taken in racing? How did you get started, and where are you now?
So I began racing at an indoor karting facility located like 45 minutes away from my house called Driven Raceway. I'm actually a first generation race car driver in my family. Nobody else races, so it was kind of a random, spontaneous thing. So we've kind of been having to learn the ropes the entire time, but I think that just makes it a lot more exciting. But yeah, so I started racing indoor at 9 for about 6 months, and then I'd won 104 out of 107 races. And so me and my dad were like, all right, well, maybe we should consider going professional. So we bought a go-kart, and then I raced go-karts in many different series and divisions and everything for about 5 years. And then started racing legend cars. And I've been racing legend cars ever since.
Okay, so 104 out of 107. That's wow. That's a pretty big statistic there. So that's pretty exciting. So somewhere in your blood, you must have some race car drivers somewhere in your background. So that's pretty cool. So what's your favorite thing about driving a race car?
Yeah, that's hard to pinpoint. I love everything about racing. I've tried so many different sports, from swimming and baseball and tennis and everything. But racing, I always noticed, was just super unique. And I think what makes it so unique is that the athlete is pretty much just alone with the race car. There's nothing dividing it. And I think that's why I love it so much, is because nobody's yelling in my ear. And it's I'm basically just reacting off of my own instincts, and I think that that's why I love it so much. So yeah.
Yeah. And of course I love team sports. My kids all play team sports, basketball, volleyball, softball, all baseball. My son played baseball and stuff. But there is a sense of accomplishment when you as the driver can take all the things that everybody's put together on your car, and I assume it's your dad pretty much that does that, all the things that you and he have done on the car and have set it up, but it comes down to you on the track to do the right thing, to know how your car is running, to not push it beyond its limits, and yet still be able to win. There's a big sense of accomplishment in that, I would think.
Yeah, I agree. Um it's almost borderline just a lot of pressure, but at the same time it is like um it's the best part of racing, and I think that that's why everyone loves it so much, is just because it just comes down to talent. And a lot of times equipment and money will divide racers, and that's why I think I love legend cars so much, is because uh, they are cheaper and they are like more of an equalizer compared to a lot of other cars. But um, yeah, I think that that's why we love it so much, is just because we do this together as a team. And yes, you are racing for your team, but at the end of the day, it just comes down to whatever the driver can do in the car.
Yeah. So, do you have? Let's talk about the people that help you. I'm assuming your dad. Do you have anybody else that you would like to mention that helps with your team?
Well, for a while, I was just traveling around California with my mom, my dad, and my stepdad. Um, and we did that for a couple years, and we, of course, did that all through karting. And then as I think 2 years into Legend Cars, I started running with Robert Gayton, and he was my coach for about a year. And so we were traveling all around. We went to 16 states in 1 year, and now I'm running with Austin Saunders on the other side of the country. So he has my cars currently stored in Texas, and so I'll be running there a lot this year, as well as North Carolina.
Okay, so you're going to be doing a lot of either travel, or you're going to go to Texas and stay, and then go to North Carolina and stay, because that's a long way from California to be going back and forth. That's pretty exciting. So, do you run in some kind of a series?
Currently, no. I'm just kind of like gathering up points as much as I can and just racing wherever as much as I can. I will be running the summer shootout at North Carolina during the summer. And then before that, I was planning on running the battle at the end of the month in Texas, but that was canceled. So that's pretty much all that I have as a series on my schedule. Everything else is just going to be random.
Okay. All right. So tell me a little bit about legend cars. I know what they are. I've seen them race a few times, but we don't really have legend cars that race in the Kalamazoo area. So why don't you tell us a little bit about a legend car, and then what makes it different from other kinds of racing?
Yeah, so the Legend car is the most difficult race car to drive in the world. It's based off of a 1934 Chevy or Ford sedan or coupe, and they have a Yamaha 1250 or 1200 engine. Um, and they are they're not very aerodynamic. They're kind of like a box shape. People like to say they're like a mini Cooper. um, they're very small, and they're a fifth to scale, and that's why exactly that they're so hard to drive, is because they have such a small wheelbase, and they're kind of like boxy. So it's not like it's super low to the ground or anything, or very wide. So everything's very sensitive, and you have to learn how to drive based off of reaction and know how to react to things very quickly and things like that.
Okay. And so that sounds a little bit challenging, I would say, because like you said, there's probably not any aerodynamic things you can change because you don't have a lot of space to work with because they're not that big of a car. But I assume there's a lot of adults, which I know there are a lot of adults that race legend cars. Um, are there very many women that race against you?
No, hardly never. It depends on what series I'm running or where I'm running. But for a long time, when I was just running in California, at like Sonoma Raceway or Thunder Hill, there was no other female that I was racing against. And that goes with oval as well. Whenever I was running in California at just local tracks, like Madera and Stockton and Roseville All American Speedway, there was like no other female I was racing against. Um, in Vegas, I was still the only girl. I think there was one other for a while out of like 100 legend cars or something. And then the more I travel across the country, I've noticed a lot more females racing. Um, and that's just in any division, in any car. Here, I guess it's just a lot lower numbers in general. So maybe that's why it's a lot, it's a lot more rare to see a female in it. But yeah, it is very, very rare.
So that's interesting to me because I would think that those size and kind of cars would be attractive to a woman because they're not quite so big and there's not, like you said, there's not as much to them as far as like money that you have to invest compared to other kinds of race cars. So it kind of surprises me, but I'm wondering if it's because it's a California thing or it's more just the legend the legend car series. It's kind of reminds me of the sprint car series. When I went to see the World of Outlaws race, there were no women racing, and there honestly were not many women even in the pits. It was 95% men, which is really unusual. When I go to a typical race, it's about half women as far as in the pits or whatever, and a lot more women driving than what I see in the sprint car world. So I assumed legend cars had more women. So you're kind of you're the rose among all the thorns, I would say, because you kind of stand out as the woman. Do you get a lot of attention because you're a girl racing with all men?
Um, it's hard to say because I've been a female in a male dominated sport this whole time. Like I've always been the minority, and um I try, personally to not look at it any differently. Um but it is hard to say like whether I do attract more like media attention or anything like that. I would say yes, because it is so rare, and it's pretty cool to see it, I think. And so a lot of people just like to talk about it or ask me about it. But I think that that's about it. It doesn't really affect me like in sponsorship or anything like that.
Okay. So do you have, like, when you go to a race, do you have a chance to have like little girls come up and talk to you? Is that something that you get a lot, is mostly little girls looking up to you?
I haven't seen it like a lot, but when it does happen, it's really, really just like it's the best feeling. And like for girls to say like I've been following you online, or just like I look up to you or anything like that, it's super, super awesome. I really do try to make it a priority to get the younger audience to look up to people, just minorities in racing or in any sport, and just look at it as if like anyone can be doing that. Like, don't be afraid to go after what you are passionate about. And um, so I think when I talk to girls about that, it's really awesome. I'm just like, hey, like, don't be fearless, like, go after it. But yeah, it does happen occasionally, whether they'll just be like, oh my God, you're a girl, I want to talk to you, or whether they're like, yeah, I know who you are, I've been following you and I look up to you. Both of them are really, really awesome. So yeah.
It is, and it's a kind of a little bit of a weight on your shoulders, because I think we forget sometimes the impact that we have through social media, especially. So when you say you have people say, "Oh, I've been following you," and I'm sure that's through social media. It reminds us all, doesn't it, that there are a lot of people out there watching what we're doing, and it's easy to forget that that's the case, because when you post things on Facebook or Instagram, it feels like it's just you and the one person or whatever. And then when you go back and look, and let's say I do an interview, and then I have 2,000 people that listen to it, I'm like, oh my gosh. you know it's it makes it seem a little more real, as far as I've got to really be on the top of my game about what I'm doing, because there are a lot of people watching. I love that you don't look at yourself any differently, because you have been racing against men all your life. So that's the normal for you, which is kind of cool. Um, I love that it's just racing. It's not a woman in racing. And you're a race car driver. You're not a woman race car driver. Do you know what I mean? You see yourself as
Yeah,
just a race car driver.
definitely.
Yeah. So what are your goals for your racing career?
My goal is to eventually make it to NASCAR. I hope to work through some of the ranks. Obviously, I can't go through them all. I can probably barely make it to one off of out of pocket money, but um, that would be the goal on track. And then obviously, again, like going back to the point about being a role model, I just want to um, be that influence and be that role model for anyone who might be nervous or scared to do anything like this, because it's so important, if you have the talent, if you have the skill, to not be set back by anything like that. So those are my two life goals, I would say.
Yeah, those are good goals, and you want to be realistic about your goal, but you also want to work hard and go as far as you can and do the best you can. So I love hearing that. I'm going to ask you a question that I often ask people that I interview, especially when they're younger, like you are. What are some other passions that you have? So let's say that for whatever reason, the NASCAR or that doesn't follow the path that you want it to. What are some other ways that, or other things that you're passionate about that might keep you involved in motorsports, but in a different area? Do you like photography, or what are some other things that you enjoy?
One thing that I've always loved is journalism. I love writing, and so I think that that is an option for me if I want to be like a racing journalist. I've also always loved math. Like since I was like a little girl, I love math. I love doing math, and so that's what I'm going to be doing in college, is just business analytics. And so whether it be keeping me, involved in racing, or just keeping me in the race car, I want to sort of always have that as a backup. And I think getting an education and going to college is super, super important. So I'm definitely going to be doing that and pursuing that, and trying to race as much as I can simultaneously. So um, besides that, I don't know. I mean, I love playing sports and stuff, but I don't know if it's anything I could pursue like for a career, you know?
Right. So no, so I love hearing that you're going to go to school and you love math, and so there's a lot, there's so many opportunities in the motorsports arena. Whether it, everybody looks at the driver, and that's mostly the people I talk to. That's their goal, which is awesome. We need young people like you to want to, you know, advance and go up through the ranks in the sport so that we have young drivers that are continuing to keep the sport alive and well. I also see that there's a lot of opportunity in a lot of other areas for people, women, everybody. You know, pit pit reporter would be a fun job. You love math. I loved accounting, so I could be the numbers person for a race car team. I just see so many opportunities in motorsports that I think a lot of people forget about, because honestly, don't we focus on the driver and then we forget about all the people it takes to get that driver to the track?
Yeah, definitely. It's so team dependent and codependent on everything, and there's just so many people doing different things. It's the driver is so minimal compared to those things.
Yeah, true. Sometimes that's right. And there's times I know, in as far as NASCAR goes, um, you know, not to say that those guys that are driving now didn't have to at some point know how to fix the car and do all that. But there are some of them who will admit that they have no clue when it comes to fixing the car or what this part does or doesn't do, because they are the driver and they focus on what the driver needs to do. And so I love Clint Boyer. He got interviewed one time, and they asked him some kind of technical question, and he laughed and he said, "Heck, I don't know. All I have to know is where's the gas, where's the brake, turn left, and where's, head for the checkered flag." Everybody laughed and that, which, but that's kind of true. I think as you advance, you have more team members that are doing their jobs, and you don't have to remember or fix all those things. So it's kind of an interesting sport that we have so many people that are involved behind the scenes that a lot of people that sit in the stands don't have a clue about. They don't know that it takes all of that to get you on the track to race. And I was just at Phoenix, Heather, not too long ago when the Phoenix NASCAR race was there. And there were some people that a friend of mine had a group of people that were able to do a tour of a couple things in the infield. And I think everyone should go to the infield or, at your local track, wherever, and see what it takes to put you on the track, because it's more than just showing up an hour before race time and putting the car out there and racing. There's a lot more to it, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So when you go to the track, I'm guessing that you go, several hours before the race starts, because you have a lot of things to get ready and to set up. And again, I think people who love racing don't always understand the whole thing that, is behind it. So Heather, if someone came to you and said, my son or daughter is interested in driving a legend car, what would you say to them? Would you encourage them to get involved in racing?
Yeah, I would always encourage the younger generation to get involved in racing if that's their actual passion and not their parents. Um, but legend cars, I would say, are not normally the first car a kid would jump into. Nowadays, it seems like it is, just because kids are trying to learn as much as they can, as fast as they can. If it's your first car and you're not coming from go-karts or anything like, quarter midgets or anything, You probably should be driving a legend car because it's going to be really, really difficult to learn how to shift and to drive and drive fast all at the same time. So I would say start in something a little bit easier and smaller, or even like a Mazda Miata or something like that. Or even just jumping on a simulator and learning a legend car off of that. I've also seen that work very well in the past. But yeah, I would always encourage someone to at least eventually get into a legend car, or if you are up for a challenge, start in a legend car, because they are so vital to driver development, and they just teach you so much, and it's pretty crazy. I'm still learning so much every single time I get into the car after almost 5 years of being in it. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk just for a minute, because we are on hiatus from actual racing on track all across the country because of this virus that's spreading. So there was just an iRacing race on TV on Sunday with a lot of the NASCAR guys. Do you ever get on to iRacing or anything like that? Is that something that you do when you're not racing, or you haven't gotten into that?
Well, my situation is a little bit blurry, because my dad, who I actually have the like simulator quote unquote stuff at, is he doesn't really have Wi-Fi. And because, like, okay, so during the economic crash in 2008, we lost our house, and so we had to move into the backyard. Me and my dad, we sort of built this small, like, 2 building house in the backyard, and we rented out the house to somebody else. And so we've kind of just been living off of like that ever since. And so that's kind of tricky because we don't have Wi-Fi and things like that. So I play Gran Turismo 6, but I beat the game 3 times, and so I'm kind of just bored of it at this point. But I do plan on taking the stuff, like the seat and the steering wheel and the pedals, to my mom's house, where we do have Wi-Fi, and playing it here instead. So once that happens, I will get iRacing and I will start playing it nonstop.
I would guess that after having that on TV, that they've gotten very busy this week, because that was pretty cool. And I know they're doing another one, I think, on Sunday, and they're gonna race the Texas track, which is pretty cool. So at least there's an opportunity there for people that do have the Wi-Fi and the setups and that, to keep their skills honed in pretty well. So that's a pretty cool thing. No other sport can do what racing can do in that respect. So Heather, I don't have any other questions for you. Do you have anything else you'd like to share about yourself or your racing before we say goodbye?
Yeah, sure. I'll mention my sponsors.
Okay.
Oil Depot out of Oklahoma, the Lindsey Vaughn Foundation, Schmee Heating and Air Conditioning is my mom's business that she works for. Ozcat Radio out of Vallejo, Machete's Coffee out of Vallejo, Vallejo Vinyl and Pinball. Thank you guys. And yeah, I think that's it.
That's pretty cool. You've got some good sponsors there. So it takes all of those people to help, and I'm sure your parents as well, to help get you on the track every week. And so, yeah, absolutely. We want to give a big shout out to those sponsors. Thank you for helping Heather get to the racetrack. And, she gets to be involved in something that obviously not a lot of girls are doing, running a legend car. And so I applaud you for that, Heather, that you just keep at it. And sounds like you're going to be as successful as you were when you started. So I'm excited to follow you. I follow you as well, just so you know. And I'm happy that we could have you on the podcast today. I really appreciate that young women want to be involved in racing and they set good role models for others. And I know that's who you are, Heather. So I wanted to thank you for that. Any last words?
Thank you so much, Melinda. That was very awesome. I think it's important to remember like the influence that some of us have, because I remember when I started looking up to people and just how much that they influenced me and how important they were to me, and like everything that they would do, I would try to replicate and copycat. And it's pretty crazy how much you can look up to somebody sometimes, and just how much you want to embody them almost. And so I think that it's so important to remember to, even the small things, like be polite and, be respectful towards others, and just like, everyone is here for the same goal. And so I think that if we all recognize that and we all treat each other with respect, then the younger generation especially is going to look up to that and recognize that as something that they want to be one day. And so, yeah, I think that that's about it. Thank you so much, Melinda, for having me.
Oh, you're welcome, Heather. And I totally agree. I think, the way we act on and off the track is very, very important. And I appreciate that I'm able to meet amazing young women like you are. So thank you again for being on the podcast. And hopefully one day I'll see you at the track.
Thank you for listening to Racing Girls Rock Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at International Women's Motorsports Association, or on Instagram and Twitter at the IWMA Nation. And if you know someone that should be on our show, drop us an email at iwmanation@gmail.com.